It's not hard to see why mini SUVs are so popular these days. Their extra height and chunky looks make them stand out from more conventional small cars. But they're even more practical and not much more expensive to buy or run. And there's some very attractive models out there too.
But which should you choose between the Kia Stonic, the Seat Arona, or one of the very first small SUVs, the Renault Captur? Yes, today is all about being small yet stylish.
To help you decide, I'll see how good looking they are.
You have to have the range-topping version if you want the contrasting roof.
Check out their practicality.
You can slide the seats forward if you want to create more room.
And find out what they're like to drive.
Also, it feels perhaps the most like a substantial, larger car.
But first of all, let's see how much they cost.
The Seat starts from £16,500. The Kia from just over £16,000, but the least expensive car is the Renault Captur, which starts from £15,500.
But one of the biggest reasons for buying a car like this will be the way it looks. So, which of these is most likely to turn heads on your local high street?
I really like the look of this Kia Stonic, you know, it stands out. There is one thing you need to know though, you have to have the range-topping version if you want the contrasting roof, which of course you do, otherwise really what's the point? You may as well just have a normal hatchback.
Then there's the Renault, which is something a little bit different again.
Most of these small SUVs try to be all angular and tough looking, whereas this Captur, it's kind of more friendly and curvaceous, even though it's still got that raised ride height. You know, it's typically French, it's trying to carve its own niche.
That's what the Seat is trying to do too, but somehow it doesn't quite manage it.
The whole point of a small SUV is that they're stylish, and for me this Seat Arona lacks that Spanish flair. You know, it's a bit more potato tortilla than padron pepper. That means it's less exciting, okay? That's my tapas reference.
But are they just as tasty inside?
Inside, this Kia has it going on. Not too much going on, which is a good thing, but just about enough to keep things interesting. I do like the design, and the layout's pretty simple and easy to use. My only criticism is the fact that some of the bits and pieces do feel a bit flimsy. So look at that, it's a bit wobbly. It's not ideal. But other than that, it's generally okay. And I like the infotainment system as well. It's quite easy to use. I like the shortcut buttons and does all that you need it to. And instead of the normal, slow, laborious dial to recline your seat, you have a lever, then you can just go up or down that quick.
After the Stonic, the Captur actually feels a little bit more upmarket.
Unusually for these types of cars, the Captur actually has some soft touch materials here on the dash and on the door tops, and that helps make it feel a little bit plush. The only downside is that the actual design of the interior it's a bit blobby. It's nowhere near as cool as the outside. I particularly don't like the dials. They're just a bit childish, really. Then there's the infotainment system. I mean, it's all right, you know, it's okay. It's just not as good as you can get in other cars.
And for proof of that, look no further than the Arona.
The inside of this car pretty much follows the outside in the way that it's not the most exciting. They've tried to liven it up a bit with this contrasting trim, but it's more sensible than kind of showy. It's a bit of a shame, really. And material quality, I mean, things feel solid, but everything's hard and brittle. It doesn't feel particularly expensive. However, the infotainment system is very, very good. Yeah, it works, it's slick. And to be perfectly honest, everything inside this cabin just works. So yeah, not the most exciting, but easy to live with.
And that sums up the Arona perfectly. It's great for everyday life, but not quite the full package. The Captur and the Stonic also have their weaknesses, which means that there's very little to choose between the three cars so far. But will that still be the case when we look at their practicality? And the Kia is not off to a good start.
It doesn't exactly feel the roomiest back here. Now, I've got okay knee and headroom, but taller people will struggle for space. As for kids, they'll be fine. What they might not like so much is the fact that it does feel a little bit dark. You could get a bit scared.
Fortunately, there's nothing frightening about the Renault.
One of the things I really like about the back seats in this car is the fact that the seat base is quite high, so you don't feel like you're squatting down. Despite that though, you've still got decent headroom. It's fine for adults back here. What it's not so good for is carrying three in the back at once because the body is quite narrow.
The Seat, on the other hand, leaves you with a very different impression.
It feels reasonably spacious here in the back of the Arona, but the best bit, I think, is the size of the windows. They're absolutely massive, and you've got the extra little window at the back there as well. So kids will love the fact that there's lots of light. Helps it feel roomy.
In fact, it doesn't just feel roomy, it's the biggest of these cars if you need to carry 3 passengers in the back at once. On the other hand, there's plenty of room for a child seat in all of them. But the ISOFIX mounts are quite tricky to find in the Seat, and that makes it a little harder to fit the seat securely in place. When it comes to safety, all three cars get 5 stars from Euro NCAP, but it's worth noting that the Renault score came back in 2013 when the regulations were less strict. And to get the safest Kia, you need the Advanced Driving Assistance Pack, which is an option on the most basic model. It's standard on the top versions though, along with some extra practical features like a multi-position floor in the boot. However, it's not all good news.
Even though this car has a adjustable boot floor and you can fit the low cover underneath, you do have a bit of a boot lip, which is annoying. Still, when you fold the seats down, they do lie pretty flat, just like in the other cars. However, the overall volume is not as good.
The Renault has a lot more space in its boot, but it isn't just big, it's clever too.
The Captur's boot has plenty of functionality, so you've got an adjustable boot floor. Look at that, great, like that. But I like this bit even more. You can slide the seats forward if you want to create more room, and then it's massive.
But you get almost as much room in the Seat, even without sliding seats.
This may be a small car, but its boot is actually a pretty decent size. I like the fact that underneath this false floor, you can keep the low cover there, so it's neatly out of the way. And with this false floor in its raised position, when you fold down the seats, you get a pretty flat load bed. Oh no, I said the word bed. It's instantly made me tired. No, I've had a tough day. I'm running out of jokes.
And when it comes to boot space, you'll run out of that most quickly in the Stonic. The Arona and Captur have much more room, especially when you slide the rear seat forward in the Renault. Drop the rear seats, and again there's more space in the Seat and the Renault. In fact, they'll take a bike without removing a wheel. To make your life easier, with the floors in their highest position, the low bed is flat and there's almost no load lip to lift things over. Overall then, if you need lots of boot space, the Seat or the Renault are clearly ahead. But can the Kia regain some ground with a good drive? Possibly.
So it's pretty clear that the Kia Stonic feels the most car-like to drive, and when I say that, it's because you sit the lowest in it. It just feels like a normal hatchback really. In terms of the suspension, it's the firmest, so the car is probably the least relaxing of the three over bumps, but the payoff is that it feels the most darty, the most agile in the corners. It can be a bit of fun actually, if you get the right road.
The Renault is also enjoyable to drive, but in a rather different way.
One thing you'll appreciate about the Captur is this raised driving position. It does give you a good view out. You'll also like the suspension. It's nice and soft, so that's great over bumps in town. What's not so great about it though is the fact that, well, it can feel a little bit kind of loose and squidgy and soft to drive when you're going faster. It doesn't feel the most sure-footed of cars. It's not bad, it just doesn't feel particularly precise. It's a bit ungainly. Engine's all right though, as long as you go for the 1.2 litre turbo petrol in this car.
And if you go for the Seat, it strikes a nice balance.
Now I think this car sits nicely in between the comfort and the softness of the Renault and the sportier, harder riding feel of the Kia. Also it feels perhaps the most like a substantial, larger car. It feels just a little bit more solid. The engine choice is good too, you know, it's wide and varied and they're all pretty impressive.
On the road then, these are three quite different cars, and you can decide which suits you best. Now though, it's time for me to deliver my verdict on which I prefer.
Well, the Renault, it is a good car. It's just a shame that the inside isn't as exciting as the outside, whereas the Kia, it does feel stylish. You know, I really like the look of this, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder, so it's got to be less subjective. And overall, it's the Seat, which is the best all-round car. You know, it's got good practicality, it drives the best, and it's got a really good infotainment system. And that's why it wins this test.